And we're ready to go. So, all right. So welcome to the Elevate Academy. The Elevate Academy is a place for student athletes, their families, and all lovers of sports. And we strive to empower each of them to be the best they can be in everything that they do. And one of the things we focus on is we focus on the complete athlete, and we focus on mind, body, game, and life. And that's one of the things we've been talking about with all of our guests. And today we probably have the greatest coach of all time, literally the greatest coach of all time. And it's amazing. It's any sport, doesn't matter. And we're privileged to have Anson Dorrance with us today. He doesn't need a real formal introduction for those who know him, but I want to bring out three things that I think are super important. And yes, everyone, I'm absolutely rocking the Carolina gear today. So here are the three highlights I wanted to bring up. 1,000 wins, crazy. 21 NCAA championships with UNC women's soccer, and World Cup champion as well. So welcome, Anson, to the Elevate Academy.
Well, thank you, Dave. I'm excited to be here. And as I just shared with you before we jumped on publicly, I have huge respect for Jenny Levy, my lacrosse coach at UNC, and all the wonderful players that we have shared through history, including one dynamite left back that played for me this past fall by the name of Julia Dorsey. So we have a lot of respect for the lacrosse community, and the fact that Jenny feeds my program with some extraordinary lacrosse players. And the thing that Jenny and I always appreciate is we like the multi-sport athletes. We like to share them, and we're huge fans of each other, and we support each other. And I appreciate this opportunity to speak with you, your coaches, and your community.
Well, I got to tell you, Jenny says such wonderful things about you. I know in the new facility, it's kind of awesome. The old Fetzer Field is now Dorrance Field, named after you. And I had a chance to tour the new facility in the fall, and it is just spectacular.
Well, it really is, and we feel obviously very privileged. We had a really generous donor whose two daughters played for me. And he was the prime mover, but it wasn't just his effort and the effort of the other donors. It was the effort of the entire athletic department, my athletic department leadership, but also the community of athletics at UNC, where we wanted to do something to honor the four sports that played on that field. Sure. We wanted track to have their own facility, and obviously in the old days, trying to marry the track program to the two soccer programs that played in the middle of that track, and also the two lacrosse programs. It was just a very crowded venue. And when Bubba Cunningham, my athletic director, decided he had to make some changes, it was actually, the prime mover was football. And we had never had an indoor football facility. And the football practice complex is literally right next to our facility. And his idea was, let's do everything at once. We built this majestic new indoor football facility that he put up, by the way, a soccer/lacrosse wall in there. So my kids can go in there and work on their strike, and a lacrosse player can work on their stick work. So that's in there, and it's a facility that serves all of us. And fortunately, we brought back another remarkable man in Mac Brown, our football coach, who was a football coach for us in the past, and then left us for Texas, where he won a national championship, and now he's come back. So we're all sharing these new facilities, and now, of course, we've got our own absolutely spectacular field. And I think because of the donor, and certainly because I've been there forever, they decided to name it after me. And I'll tell you, there's no better feeling than having a piece of heaven named after you. So I feel really, real privileged to have a field at this incredible university named after me. And I share that field with other national champions. Jenny has won her share, as has our men's soccer coach and the men's lacrosse coach. So I'm in there with all these national championship coaches, and we absolutely love it.
Well, Joe Bresci, who is the men's coach at UNC, Joe and I are really good friends. Joe did a stint at my alma mater, Brown University, where he coached there for a little while. So Joe and I got to know each other really well. And Joe's just one of the class acts in the business as well. It's just like Jenny. And from everything that he said, it's amazing. It's and it's a question I had further down on my list, but you have this opportunity at UNC to work with so many amazing coaches that are literally at their tops in all of their respective sports. And it doesn't matter whether it's literally women's tennis to track and field to an up and coming wrestling program to national champions in field hockey, 2 years in a row, undefeated. You guys playing a national championship this year, Jenny, what she's done, Joe winning a national championship a few years ago in men's lax. It's literally, I know they say UNC is University of North Carolina, that they say University of National Champions.
Well, you're absolutely right. And thank you for bringing in my colleagues, because we love working with each other. And obviously, there's something in the water here. And I've got to go back to the prime mover. I've got to go back to Dean Smith. And for those of you that don't know that name and don't know who he is,
you've been living in a hole for a while if you don't.
Well, yeah, but, a lot of people, that have jumped into the sports more recently don't have an appreciation for this great man. But I think everyone will appreciate this. This was Michael Jordan's college basketball coach. And for all of us that had the privilege of knowing him, but also had the privilege of working here back when he was our coach, he's the one that taught us how to treat people. He used to treat his lowliest manager with the same respect and affection that he treated Michael Jordan with. And anyone that's involved in coaching or mentoring or teaching has to appreciate what the bottom line is. And the bottom line is you got to love the people you're teaching and coaching. And Dean Smith was the one that taught me that lesson way back in the day before, honestly, I was mature enough or old enough to appreciate it. Because back then, when you're a young coach or even an athlete, you really think that what's most important is X's and O's. And I'm going to be this brilliant tactician. And I'm going to have these amazing drills that are going to inspire my kids to get to the highest level. And we're going to win championships because I really know the game and I know how to organize a team and I know how to run a practice. And then as you get older, it dawns on you, you know what? There's nothing wrong with being good with the X's and O's. And there's nothing wrong with running a good practice. But ultimately, if you want to be extraordinary in the coaching profession, but honestly in any profession, you have to love the people that you're mentoring. You've got to love your players. You've got to love your staff. You've got to treat people in the most extraordinary and positive way. And I learned all that at the feet of Dean Smith, basically at his feet, when in the old days I had no understanding of what he was doing or how successful these simple ideas were. But the older I got, the more mature I got, the more I understood, you know what, he's doing something more than coaching basketball. He's coaching human beings.
Right.
And he's throwing his arms around these extraordinary athletes that he's working with. And that's the sort of coach I want to be. And so what's happened here at UNC is that's the idea that every coach has. We want to make sure the kids that we bring in are kids that are respected by us, that trust us. They know that their service for us is not just on the athletic field. It's also in their academic quest at UNC, because we're an extraordinary school academically.
Hard school to get into out of state.
Oh, absolutely. And it's the character piece. And so all these pieces are all rolled together. And all those coaches you mentioned, they're extraordinary because we all believe in the same thing. We believe in serving these young men and young women that we are given the privilege of mentoring. And as a result, the success just rolls out every year.
Well, what's interesting is, you mentioned, that whole of what it's about, the big picture. And I love that so much because, as a coach, and that's what the Elevate Academy is about. It's about the big picture. It's not just, can you create the best soccer player or the best lacrosse player? It's, can you help each of these individuals be the best that they could be in everything that they do? And when Jenny was recruiting my daughter, Kate, and Kate will hopefully not get embarrassed by this, and she asked Kate a simple question. She said, Kate, why do you want to come here? And she said, you're going to make me into a better woman.
Absolutely. And you just hit the nail on the head. And that's what's in the water here. And Jenny knows this. And what I love about Jenny is she got this a long time ago. And so she fit right in with our culture. And obviously in lacrosse, even though there is a burgeoning league, they don't have the opportunity to go pro in lacrosse. And so the thing that Jenny got really early is she was developing these women for the real world.
Sure.
And how was she doing it? She was doing it through what she was teaching in lacrosse. And she has been a pioneer for all of us in athletics at UNC in what happens post-college. Because obviously most of my elite players have the ambition of playing professional soccer, representing the United States on the Olympic team or
World Cup.
on the World Cup teams. And so that's sort of their dream coming in. But once they get here, they realize, well, that's not all we're going to be driving them towards. And the stuff that Jenny is really good at in teaching her players and inspiring her kids is the life after college, the life after lacrosse. And honestly, that's our primary mission.
Well, it's amazing. You have a brand new book that, recently came out. Tim Crothers, if people don't know who Tim Crothers is, Tim's done some great books. He's actually a UNC alumnus himself. He wrote for Sports Illustrated, but in your most recent book, The Man Watching, blew me away. The one section that just absolutely killed me. And I hope I don't get too emotional, because everyone who knows me, I get super emotional reading it. But this is the one section I love. He wrote, Tim wrote this about you. He said, he knows, and this is about you writing the letters to your kids, the seniors. And he said, he knows that he only has a moment with these letters. And this could be his last chance to let each senior know how much he cares about them. He wants each young woman to know that even though he has spent the last 4 years telling them that this isn't good enough or that isn't good enough and she isn't good enough, that what he has secretly been searching for all along is what is really good enough in her. That's powerful. That is amazing. And then the letters to the kids that, you were kind enough to include, they're just phenomenal.
Well, thank you, Dave. Well, honestly, I'm reading this book that was given to me by my athletic director about moments and how we have to take advantage of them. There is no more accelerated emotional sort of cauldron than the feeling your team has before they step on the field for a national championship final. And so that's the time when we roll out these letters, because the emotional, intensity is so extraordinary. It's actually visceral. You can feel it in the room. And so this is a conduit that obviously you're rarely given in someone's life, where you can speak right to their heart. And so for me, I take advantage of it. I do my best to try to communicate something that means something to the young women that are about to play in their last collegiate game. And it's something that's been a part of our tradition. And it's something I absolutely cherish. And as you can sense from the way we construct the letters, I think they cherish it as well. And for me, it's just a wonderful opportunity into their souls and their hearts. And I try to take advantage of it. And for the rest of their lives, they will know every quality they have that I think is extraordinary is shared in those letters. And then, of course, the motivation they have in the final is just extraordinary. And our winning percentage in the national championship final is better than our winning percentage at any other time, which is ridiculous. So how can your winning percentage in the national championship game be better than your winning percentage, in the regular season or the NCAA tournament or the ACC tournament? It's ridiculous, but it is because of the emotional high they're on to try to send out the seniors winners. And so for me, this is a window I have, and I take full advantage of it.
It's amazing. So, this year, obviously, you guys, once again, you went to the NCAA championship, had to play against a really tough Stanford team, and you took them to PKs. And, you were right there with, an amazing team and almost pulled it off again.
Well, yeah, Dave, I appreciate that. Yeah, that Stanford team is the greatest Stanford team I've ever seen. And they were just destroying teams. And they destroyed
15-0 in their first game of the opening round of the NCAA playoffs. 15-0 in a soccer game.
Yeah, no, they had their roster, their whole roster were kids that blew us off. So trust me, their roster was deep in the best talent the country had ever seen. And so going in against them, obviously we had our work cut out for us, but we made a game of it. And I don't want to pretend that we dominated it, because we certainly did not. But we did have stretches of the game. We made it hard for them, and we could have won it. Any team can win in penalty kicks. Sure. We actually had a chance, with a couple minutes to go in regulation that just skipped past Alessio Russo's foot about 6 yards out from the goal. So we were close to taking them out. And I could not be prouder of my team and how they played against an absolutely brilliant Stanford team.
You know, it's interesting. I had brought in a leadership coach to talk to one of my teams to just talk about leadership. And what they did was, good friend of mine, Joe Schweitzer, he's a United States Naval Academy grad and just an amazing person. Joe had them go through and they mapped out on an actual wall board all their highs and their lows from the season. And then he asked the coaches to do the same thing. And we lost a game in a national tournament in the championship. And as coaches, we had that as one of our highest. What was interesting is the girls had it as one of the lowest. And that dichotomy of, we were so proud of them and we had overcome a lot of adversity to get to that championship game. And even in the game, our goalie got hurt in the game and we lost by a goal, and I couldn't have been more proud, yet they felt that was a downer. Kind of interesting.
No, you're right. And what's interesting about that championship game is a lot of my alumni were commiserating with me about the fact that we didn't win. And obviously colleagues of mine, friends of mine, the coaching profession were commiserating. And I think I shocked them and letting them know I was entirely satisfied. I don't really think that just because you get to a national championship game that, you have to win it. I mean, Stanford was better. They were better coming into the game. They were better during the game. Now, were they remarkably better? No. But I think one of the reasons they weren't remarkably better is because we played incredibly well to keep that Stanford team, basically off the books.
Sure.
And the thing that was what was really good is the effort that we expended. And so I think a lot of the alumni were actually shocked with the way I looked at that. But you have to look at everything within the context of what they achieved. And you can only be as good as you can be. And we were as good as we could be in that game. And considering that we lost our best player 2 games ago against USC, just like the previous year, we had lost our best player in the final regular season game. For those teams without their best players, the last 2 years to get the national championship final, and to basically 2 years ago to more or less dominate that final, but lose, and then this last year tie it against a team that for all intents and purposes should have blown us off the field. I'm incredibly proud. So for me, just like you, losing your goalkeeper, I don't think these people fully understand what is the most important thing. Yeah, we would love to win absolutely everything, but sometimes the achievement in losing or tying has to be measured against what they achieved in a much more accurate way than something as simple as the final score.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was talking about this with one of my colleagues, and we were talking about a coach who had won, Coach of the Year. And, sometimes I think that there's not enough time that they put into, the Coach of the Year, and they look, okay, well, this person won, a championship or whatever. But what about the coach who literally didn't win a championship, but got so much more out of their team? Like, to me, that's like the definition of that's your Coach of the Year.
Correct. And I think one thing soccer does a really good job with on the women's side is they do honor that coach. Because the national Coach of the Year this year wasn't the Stanford coach who won it all. It was the Washington State coach that basically walked through every team until they ran into us. And by the way, they gave us a hell of a game in the semi.
That they did. Watch that.
Yeah, it was terrifying. So they appropriately honored him. He's not in the same recruiting position that we're in, or the University of Virginia is in, one of the teams he knocked out very early. Virginia was the number 1 seed going into the game against Washington State relatively early in the NCAA tournament. And this coach and his wonderful team of competitors knocked them out. They came close to knocking us out. So he was appropriately given the National Coach of the Year award. And so I have nothing but respect for those kinds of people. So Dave, I absolutely agree with you.
One of the players for me that's one of my favorite. I talk about it all the time. Whenever we get together with our kids and we're able to talk about it, we're always talking about effort. and rewarding effort and using those little effort plays that make a difference in winning games. And I always bring up the story about Mia Hamm and, you know, your definition of a true champion. Can you talk a little bit about that right now?
Sure. What you're referring to is a note I wrote her in the second semester of her senior year. And obviously, I love these kids, and at any opportunity, especially now with texting, to zip off a simple text to someone that has done something you respect is obviously the modern version of the story I'm about to tell. But back in the old days, as you know, you couldn't just pick up your phone and text someone. What you had to do, if you wanted to write them something personal and not, call them on the phone, you would actually write a note. So for, the modern generation of people that are listening in, in the old days, that's what you did. You wrote a little note to someone, a letter. And so this particular morning, I think it was in late February of Mia's senior year, I was driving to campus through Umstead Park. It's not the fastest way to work. For me, the fastest way to work is to zip out here on Sewell Elementary School Road, make a left on Estes Drive Extension, make a right on Martin Luther King, then take some side streets, and then all of a sudden I'm in my office. That route takes me, 10 to 12 minutes. There's another route I can take that's much more scenic that every now and again I'll take just because it's a beautiful little park.
Nice way to go.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a beautiful little park in Chapel Hill, and sometimes I go through it. This particular morning, I'm going through Umstead Park. And out of the corner of my eye, I can see this figure going 5 and back, 10 and back, 15 and back, 20 and back, 25 and back. And it's clearly our fitness session, which we call cones. It's exhausting. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that sort of looks like Mia. Let me pull over and watch this. And I pulled over in the parking lot. She wasn't aware that I was even watching her. And gosh, I was so impressed because between these sprints, you could see just this hot air shooting from her lungs. You could see sweat just flying off her brow. You could see her chest heaving from her effort in doing this fitness stuff. And I was just so impressed. I drove into work without her even realizing I was there. I scribbled a note to her. I dropped it in the mail and I forgot about it. Well, 10 years later, after she had become world famous, she wrote a book called Go for Gold, and she sent me that book. And there, in the breastplate of the book, was the note I'd written her. The vision of a champion is someone who is bent over, drenched in sweat at the point of exhaustion when no one's watching. The final measure in athletic greatness is not what you do in practice, because everyone's there in practice. Well, the final measure in athletic greatness is what you do on your own to prepare yourself to become the absolute best player you can be. I knew that was the moment that Mia was going to ascend to the greatest player in the world, because it's that kind of investment that takes the great players to their potential, not the practice investment. Everybody's practicing. That doesn't separate you. Something else has to separate you. It's what you do on your own, how you organize your time outside of practice that takes you to the best player in the world.
I get goosebumps listening to the story. It's interesting. I was coaching my daughter's youth lacrosse team one time at Cold Spring Harbor High School on Long Island. And on the side, I see this guy doing the same exact thing. No shirt on, really just in incredible shape. And he's sprinting as hard as he can. And I said to the girls, I go, look at this guy. Look at how hard he's working right now. No one's watching him. He's on his own. And look how hard he's working. I was so impressed. I went over to him and I said, hey, I just got to tell you, I'm really impressed with how hard you're working. My name is Dave Kotowski. I'm like, what's your name? And he's like, oh, I'm John Orson. I'm like, what sport do you play? He's like, I play lacrosse at Hofstra. I'm like, oh, John Danowski, who's the Hofstra coach at the time, is a really good friend of mine. Grew up in our town. He's good friends with our family. I know John really well. I go, I said, John would be very proud of you. I got home and I sent John a note about this kid. I said, I just met one of your kids. He called me up and he goes, Dave, that kid's going to be a captain this year. He goes, he came to us as an attackman. We're moving him to long pole. He's going to be one of the best long poles in the country. I guarantee you. I said, his work ethic alone, I watched him one time. Didn't watch him ever play lacrosse. I just watched him do sprints. I'm like, that kid's going to be amazing. Fast forward 2 years later, I was president of the Long Island Lizards of Major League Lacrosse. I drafted John Orson.
Well, there you go. I mean, and we all have these stories. Another one of my favorites is we were practicing down in our practice field at Finley Golf Course 1 year. And this was basically maybe 6 months to maybe 9 months before the Olympics. And one of my favorite former players, who's currently the assistant at Duke, named Carla Worden-Overbeck, had just given birth to her first child. And she was still on the national team. And for the first time ever, we were going to be in the Olympics. So this was pre-96.
Wow.
And Carla, of course, living in Chapel Hill, had to get ready for the Olympics, but she had just had this baby boy. And now she was trying to get her body back in shape. So we're practicing. And all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I see Carla enter our practice complex. On her left shoulder is the diaper bag. And on her right hip is her son, Jackson August Overbeck, this baby. And I am running practice, but between running the practice, I'm turning my head to see what Carla's doing over on the far field away from us. And sure enough, she's setting up these cones for an exercise we call 20s, 40s, 60s, 80s, 100s, which is 20 20-yard sprints, then 18 40-yard sprints, then 16 60-yard sprints, then 14 80-yard sprints, and then 10 100-yard sprints. She's setting up this sprint thing that she was going to do on her own. But I'm watching this, and periodically, she would have to set these things up because she wanted her baby to know she hadn't deserted her. So she would get the diaper bag. She would stuff the baby into it so the baby could be looking at her doing the sprinting. And then I had to stop practice. And I said, girls, just come on over here and don't make this obvious, but I want you to watch what greatness is all about. And all of a sudden, the entire team is watching Carla, just like you're talking about with this lacrosse player that you were watching, doing these death sprints. And then periodically, you would literally see the baby, because of the size of the head, topple over in the diaper bag. And you would see Carla go running over to her baby, who's now toppled over, grab it, restuff it into the diaper bag so it could keep watching, and then return to, sprinting. And at the end of all this, I turned to my team and I said, you know who that is, don't you? And of course, everyone did. I said, you know what? This is the margin of victory. And sure enough, what do they do in 96? And then what do they do in 99 with Carla as the captain of the U.S. Olympic team? And in front of 90,000 people in the Rose Bowl, she wins a gold medal in 96. She wins a world championship in 99 after she had already won a world championship in 1991 with me. That's the margin. That's what athletic greatness is all about. So what's your excuse? She just punched out this little kid. Her body's a wreck. And what is she doing? She's getting it ready to conquer the world. And so I'm looking at my young, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds. What is your frigging excuse? I mean, look at this. Look at this. This is greatness. You guys are watching greatness right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's greatness, it's grit, it's being a self-starter, all those things that just go into, that's it's awesome. When I used to work for Merrill Lynch, and back in the day, I would go around the country and I would speak on behalf of Merrill Lynch, and they hooked me up with a professional speaker who's a motivational speaker. His name's Dr. Dennis Kimbrough, and what Dennis would do. Did I just lose you there, Anson? Can you still hear me?
Someone's calling in, but.
Okay.
Don't
That's
worry.
all right.
I'll call him back.
Yeah. So Dennis Kimbrough wrote a book of what makes the great great. And I saw that book. It's literally right on my shelf. And Dennis and I used to speak around the country, and that was his topic. And it was always amazing to me whenever I'd meet someone who was, famous or a tremendous athlete or, a big time scientist. I always ask him, like, what makes the great great? And you know what? It's those same commonalities that you just talked about. It's that willingness to never give up. It's to push yourself beyond your own boundaries. And as a coach, in also reading your book, the man watching, one of the things that you talk about is how do you get the most out of your players that they don't even realize they're capable of?
You're spot on with everything you're sharing right now. And this is this is our challenge, to drive people to their potential. And here's what's interesting. When you talk to the typical athlete that wants to be extraordinary, they'll tell you the right things in a conversation. Certainly when you're recruiting someone, they will tell you how hard they work. They will tell you how committed they are. They'll tell you what a great teammate they are. But what's really interesting is we're on a continuum from extraordinary in a certain area to, basically frigging useless.
Right.
So we talk about 8 different categories that you've got to master if you truly want to be extraordinary. And in our individual player conferences, this is what we talk about. We talk about self-discipline. No better example of the self-discipline than the stories you and I are sharing back and forth with each other. The Mia Hamm story, the Carla Worden-Overbeck story, the story you were sharing about that Kotowski kid that was sprinting on his own. I mean, so we are exchanging the self-discipline stories. And of course, there are so many other stories that are critical. Competitive fire. I mean, these great players would rather die on the field than lose a game. And so what you're seeing is you're seeing this quality, this self-belief quality, this confidence that they think they can completely, win games on their own, is another critical quality for us, but also for you in lacrosse. Love of the ball. The stick handlers in lacrosse, the magicians with the ball in soccer, like the Tobin Heaths, they are separate. And why are they separate? Because just like we were talking about earlier, the kids that find that wall and they're working on this wall forever, they have a ball mastery that separates them. So why are they so good at, carving everyone up in lacrosse and soccer? They have mastered the ball. So it's love of the ball. It's love of playing the game. These are kids that are organizing pickup games every day of their lives because they love the game. Love of watching the game. In my sport, one of the biggest problems we have on the women's side is they don't watch the game. I love it when they date one of the men on our men's team. Every male at UNC that plays on the varsity watches the game at the highest level. It's pulling teeth for me to get my women to watch the game at the highest level, which is why I love it when they're dating the boys in the men's team. Why? Because I know what they're doing with their free time. They're watching the game together. So I love it when, the captain of my team is dating the captain of the men's team, because I know she's now becoming a fan of, Chelsea and Arsenal and these days, Man City and Liverpool. And I know that's what she's watching now. So self-discipline, competitive fire, self-belief, love of the ball, love of playing the game, love of watching the game. But these 2 final things we've already talked about, grit and coachability. If you want to get to your potential, you've got to believe that when a coach tells you something, he's only interested in taking you to your potential. And so many players that are uncoachable fight you on it because they think you're trying to hurt their feelings or put them down, or, you're not, saying this to someone else. And what they don't understand, you don't talk to the kids that don't have any potential. Don't you understand that? If your coach isn't saying anything to you, I mean, you're in trouble, because what the coach is doing, if he's not breathing a word to you, is he doesn't think you've got the potential to get any better. And then, of course, there's this cliche we talk about in our player conferences on a regular basis. There are 3 kinds of players. Basically, they're based on their ability. The players that want to be left alone, and those are the ones that are usually the worst. The players that want to be coached, and the players that want the truth. So who do you want to be as a player? You want to be the player that wants the truth.
Yeah.
Because if you can handle the truth, going back to, one of my favorite movies, about a few good men, if you can handle the truth, it's going to benefit you as a player, because then you can skip all the BS of protecting yourself against the chaos of the universe by creating a narrative that gives you an excuse for why you suck, or why you're not starting, or why you're never going to become any better. You eliminate all the excuses if you embrace the truth. So please don't develop a narrative that protects you from pain and protects you from the reality that you're just not doing enough. Embrace the prospect from your coach there's another level in you, and then decide whether or not you want to get there. And if you don't get there, you still have to support the team and the mission, and embrace the fact that, you know what, you didn't invest enough into that. So make sure if you invest it in something else, that's paying you what you need for the time you've spent there. And we talk to our kids about this all the time. If I had a choice for my kids to win gold medals in world championships or cure cancer, I would pick cure cancer.
Every time.
Yeah. So if you're pouring yourself into something else, like your academics, like your relationships with the extraordinary people around you, like different things that you're interested in, and that's where you want to spend your life and your time, then if you're not spending any time in your soccer development or lacrosse development, embrace the fact you're the last player to be subbed in.
Yeah.
Why? Because you've spent your time someplace else. But make sure if you are spending your time somewhere, you're spending it in a good cause. For your own elevation, the elevation of your community, for the development of your spirituality for some reason. But then please don't develop a narrative that protects you from the fact you're not any good. If you haven't invested in it, embrace the fact that this is why you're not. Because the people that invest in themselves in all these different areas are the ones that become better and better and better.
It's the 10,000 hour rule, the 10,000 hour rule. How much time are you willing to commit to it? This past year, one of our rising juniors, really good goalie playing for us. And she came to me and she said, Dave, I think I'm not going to play this year. And I think she was so concerned about how I was going to react to it. And I said, okay, what's your plan? She goes, I love music. And she does, on her Instagram feed, it's her always playing music. And she goes, I just want to go after it. I want to go after music. And I'm like, then go after it. Give it everything you have. And, to see her blossom now in the music that she's putting out there. And the greatest thing ever, she wrote a song called Team Elevate. And she gave that to me, framed in a picture. It's like, it's as good as you get. But that's really what we want out of our kids is I don't care what it is you do. It's choose that thing that means the most to you and go after it like your life depended on it.
You're absolutely right. In fact, it's wonderful you're sharing that story with me because obviously all my kids, and I have 3 kids, they all played soccer growing up. But I was not one of these dads that felt like they had to be great at this. In fact, I used to cringe when I would go out to watch my daughters play and all of a sudden someone on the sideline realized one of my daughters was out there, and then I would spend the rest of the game watching them, absolutely beat one of my kids to death just to prove to me that was on the sideline how great they were. And I just was always just very protective of them, but also encouraged what they wanted to do. My wife is a former professional dancer. She set up her own dance studio here in Chapel Hill while all my kids were growing up. So all my kids jumped into the dance world. And so my eldest kid decided, dance was very important to her. So she had to find, one of the great cities to go to where dance would be a part of her life. And so she chose New York and NYU. And she went there. She played 1 season of college soccer as soon as she got there. And then she invested the rest of her time there, certainly in her academics, in learning that great city, but also in the dance world. And now I am very proud to share she's a MacArthur Genius Award winner in dance.
Wow.
She runs her own dance company called Dorrance Dance New York. She lives in Brooklyn with my son, who's her musical director. And so she chased her passion. And now she is literally one of the greatest of all time in dance. There was an article written in Dance Magazine about the 10 greatest tap dancers of all time. And she's one of them. And keep in mind, this is a black art form. And here's this white chick that is one of the 10 greatest rhythm tap dancers of all time because she chased her passion. And I absolutely love it. I'm proud of her, proud of all my kids, certainly proud of my son that's her dance director. She's right up there with you. They live in Brooklyn, and it's Dorrance Dance New York, and she just absolutely loves it. So yeah, let's be passionate about something. And if you don't choose this, choose something.
Well, I'll tell you, it's funny. I grew up. I'm the youngest of 6 kids, and I grew up in a very matriarchal family. My mom raised us on her own, and my one sister, Noelle, was probably the best athlete in the family. She played boys sports back in the day, and Noelle's 16 years older than me, and today I think she's going to be 69 this year. She's still playing women's soccer in a 26 and over league.
Well, that's impressive because I'm still trying to play, but I'm totally falling apart. I've got a torn left hip labrum. My left knee is deteriorating. I've got back issues. But I try to play in an old goats tournament every summer, basically the over 60s, the over 65s. Next year, I'm eligible for the over 70 division. So I'm trying to continue to play. So I admire that, what you've just shared with me.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and she's still playing and loves it, and she's as committed as ever. And that's the passion. But that's what sports is about. And I think one of the things that's crazy right now in our country is what's happening, obviously, with the COVID-19 virus and everything. And we're seeing just how important sports are to us, and how people are reacting to this in different ways, and having something that you love so much. All of the kids this year, not only the spring athletes, a lot of people are talking about the spring athletes who have gotten an extra year of eligibility from the NCAA, but a lot of the winter athletes who were just about to get into their championships, and that's taken away from them, and how important that is. And some people who don't get sports, they look at it like, all right, so they weren't able to play for a championship. I'm like, no, you don't understand. They've been working for this their entire lives. This is everything.
No, you're absolutely right. And I miss it too. And my kids originally were living in Brooklyn, but because of all the issues that you guys are fighting there on Long Island in New York, we were so terrified that if they got sick, there'd be a long line for, the hospitals up there are overwhelmed. So we asked them to come down. So basically, we've had our Brooklynites in our lower level for the last week and a half, and we're waiting 3 or 4 days until they're finally done with their quarantine, because I've finally found a game I can play while I'm falling apart, and that's pickleball.
There you go.
I'm going to take my 2 kids out there, and we're going to play some doubles and pickleball, just because, like you and everyone else, I'm missing my sports.
Yeah. I had a catch with my daughter the other day. We took the dogs to the dog park, and we brought the lacrosse sticks, and we had a catch. I was like, man, I miss this. I miss this. I went out for my walk this morning. I took a little video, and I sent it to my high school team, and I said, God, I miss being out there with you guys so much.
No, I get it. I absolutely get it. Yeah, I can't wait to start doing something again.
Yeah, so it's crazy. A couple other things I want to bring up. You talk about recruiting and what you're looking for in players, and we talk about some of the things, coachability and grit. So our last guest was Devin Wills. She's a head coach at Harvard University, and she was also a Team USA player. Really changed the position of being a goalie. Super athletic, just a phenomenal player, great leader. Her question that she had for you is, what has been your best recruiting tool that you've used to get the best kids to UNC?
I guess a combination of factors, but unquestionably our tradition. The elite players in our game have the ambition to play in the Olympics and on the World Cup team. And the fact I coached the United States for 8 years gives me a nice resume piece and a credibility that I can also help them get to that level, since I coached them in. That's a part of it. But also, if you look at the legacy of kids that have come through UNC and played at the highest level, it's a remarkable list. In fact, when we won our 4th World Championship in women's soccer this past summer, one of the commentators was commenting on the 4 World Championship teams and mentioned in a broadcast that 1 out of 3 players of the 4 World Championship teams were trained at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And that's an incredible percentage.
Wow.
So one out of 3. So we obviously use that in recruiting. That if you come here, your opportunity to play at the highest level is going to be accelerated because of our tradition and the things that we do with you to help you get to your potential. So the recruiting pieces for us that I think are the most powerful are the fact that we're going to help you get to the promised land if you have professional ambitions and Olympic team ambitions and World Cup ambitions. And so that's probably our best weapon.
Well, I want to bring up a topic that's, it's kind of a sore topic, is parents in the game today. You know, my mom was unbelievable. My mom was a great athlete too. My mom never took me to practice. I rode my bike to practice. You know, parents are attending practices, watching their kids, and, you know, parents are all over them. I also coached ice hockey back in the day. All three of my girls played ice hockey, and I went to get my USA level 4 hockey certificate. You had to take a class, and they brought in the head coach from University of Minnesota at the time. And he said, you know, a lot of people think, you know, I have the dream job. Hockey in Minnesota is the biggest sport. It's crazy. University of Minnesota, you know, we're competing for national champs every year. He goes, but if I had the chance to coach at one other place, there's only one other place I would coach, and that would be a school of orphans, so I'd have no parents to deal with. And we all laughed and chuckled, and it's a great joke. But even as you, with 1,000 wins under your belt, do you ever have to deal with parents nowadays?
Well, one thing we do, and you've seen this since you've read the books, is we're pretty transparent in where a kid is on our roster. And a lot of that's done with data. And so they get to see, the parents get to see how their kids are competing. And so honestly, not as much as I think a lot of other coaches have to deal with. But we do have the occasional parent that is trying to, again, protect their kid from the chaos of the universe. And so what they construct around their kid are excuses for why they're not playing. And obviously the easiest finger to point as an excuse for not playing is at me, because I'm making the decision. Like, I don't have a vote, you know, at the end of practice to see who's starting the next day. No, I know who's starting. I've picked them. And one of the things that's sort of interesting when coaches ask me about the preseason, they're always shocked to find out I always have a starting lineup. The players know I always have a starting lineup. Who's the starting lineup for the first practice in the fall? It's the starting lineup at the end of the last practice in the spring. That's my starting lineup. Now, if I've recruited well, hopefully I've got 2 or 3 kids like I did this past year that can fight their way into the starting lineup, which a lot of them obviously do in preseason. One of the incoming freshmen will fight her way onto the field, like Julia Dorsey.
Yeah.
Yes, she fights her way onto the field, but was she the starter the first day of practice in the fall? No, we had our own starting lineup. So I am deciding who's going to start. But what the parents will do if they are, and not just helicopter parents, because of course the helicopter parent has evolved. They've evolved into this wonderful parent we now call the snowplow parent. The snowplow parent pushes everything out of the way of their children so they don't have to do anything. And of course, the best examples of this were the parents that bribed their way into the University of Southern California or Stanford or UCLA.
Yeah,
because they were rich.
We call that the banker parent. Now it's the new. That's the banker parent. So you have the helicopter parent, the snowplow parent. Now you get the banker parent.
I love that. I wasn't even aware of the new name, so thank you. You're educating me on the evolution of parents now. But yeah, so now there are these parents that want to make sure their kids don't have to do anything to basically achieve things. And of course, that's you can't cripple your children anymore than by basically doing everything for them. And obviously the elite parents understand this. And who do these elite parents develop? They develop elite kids. They don't buy their way in, as you're describing, the banker parent. They don't push the obstacles out of the way, because hell, a part of growth is climbing that obstacle. That's going to make you, grow a lot faster. So I don't run into it that often, but when I do, I confront it head on. And I don't let the parent basically presume that I have a prejudice against their kid. I will let them know that I care about their kid, and here's what their kid needs to do if she wants to get on the field or play more. And I'm very transparent with them. And obviously, with all the data that we collect, it's so simple for me to, send data towards them. But I probably don't deal with as many of them as some other coaches. And so I think one of the things that having our kind of success, it protects you from
absolutely.
Those kinds of parents. Although one of my favorite stories, and my wife is in the next room, and she will remember this story. We had a kid that was a very good player that started for me in her junior year, and she'd fought her way onto the field, but she wasn't really getting it done. So I brought her off the bench in her senior year. In her junior year, we didn't win the national championship, but in her senior year, we did. and we won the national championship in the year she came off the bench. So we didn't win it in the year she started. We won it in the year she came off the bench. And so I am not exaggerating. This is the day after we won the national championship. And that championship was hosted over here at Wake Med Park, which is 25 minutes away from my campus. And so a lot of the parents, of course, came in. And because the game was in the late afternoon, but also in the event we won, the parents don't fly out on Sunday night. They fly out on Monday, basically because we're going to celebrate that night if we've won.
Sure.
So, of course, we won, we celebrated. And then the next day, this parent comes into my office and has the audacity to attack me that his daughter should have played a lot more and started the year after we won the day after we had won the national championship. And my wife is listening in the next room because we're trying to go to a dinner and a movie. And so she's in the next room, and she and I had this conversation after I finally got the parent to leave. And she said, Anson, you said the same thing to the parent about 15 times in a row, and he just refused to listen to you. And I said, honey, you're absolutely right. But, some of these parents are absolutely blind. And obviously their love for their children and the fact they want to protect them from pain takes over. And then they become absolutely irrational. And that's why he wasn't listening to me the entire time. And she was incredulous. She was incredulous that, heck, his daughter was now a national champion.
Right.
But he wasn't satisfied because she had to come off the bench. But it was the year after she was a starter. So do I run into these parents on occasion? Yes, I do. But do I probably run into a fewer of them than many coaches? Yes, because I think most coaches, the day after we win the national championship, are going to be excited and celebrating and proud of their kid with whatever role she had in that run to the championship.
Yeah, you're in your glow.
Exactly.
Well, so listen, this has been incredible. Just been literally, I can't even tell you how many times I've had goosebumps with you talking. Our next guest tomorrow is Kylie O'Miller, and Kylie is literally the all-time leading scorer in NCAA history. All-American from Stony Brook University. She's literally one of the new faces of women's lacrosse. Signed a huge endorsement deal with New Balance. She's a pro player. She plays on Team USA. But really what's great about Kylie is she's literally inspiring young girls. She plays at a different level. She shoots it behind her back. Her trick shots are just incredible. She's just a game changer. So she's our next guest. What is your question that I'm going to ask of Kylie tomorrow when I speak to her?
Ask her if it's more important for her to love her coach or trust him or her.
Wow, that is a great one. All right, we're going to ask Kylie that. The last thing here on the Elevate Academy, we always finish up with this, is, and the one thing which I didn't start at the beginning of this, is all this is unscripted. We don't tell anyone what we're going to ask the questions beforehand. But the last question we always ask is we want to empower people, especially at this time, what's going on in our country, globally. We want to empower them. What's the single best piece of advice you've ever gotten, and who gave it to you?
Gosh, that's really, really tough. Honestly, I've been impacted in so many different ways through so many different people and mediums and books. Honestly, that's an absolutely impossible question for me to answer.
Well, how about this? What's one great piece of advice you have for any up and coming recruits who might want to play at the college level?
I think if they want to get to their potential, the critical thing in my game is love of the ball. If you can master the ball, you're going to separate. So for me, that's the challenge. And I've had so many players that absolutely fell in love with the ball, and to watch their impact, not just for my collegiate team, but for their pro teams,
Right.
and the national teams and Olympic teams. I still get to see them, obviously, on national television, in world events, and it's just so much fun because that's doing more than just helping them win. It's selling our game. And I think all of us are still in the process of selling our game, selling our sport. And so what our women's national team is involved in right now is this bitter dispute with U.S. Soccer about equal pay. Well, a part of what's going to allow our women to make a living off the game is if we can make it so attractive to watch that all of our stadiums will be just bursting with attendance. And if you look at the construction of all the great sports in the United States, they're all driven by attendance.
Viewership, yeah.
Yeah, and so basically the NBA, the NFL, Major League Baseball, the NHL, it's all driven by spectators. And I think what attracts all of us to our sport is this ball mastery. So if the young kids out there can just master the ball, they're going to not only contribute to every team they play for, but they're going to help sell our sport in the most positive way. And then these young women will eventually be making, 7 figures
Sure.
in their sport because everyone is so excited about watching them play.
Well, what's interesting is, and this is just me personally, when it comes to soccer, I much prefer watching the women play. I don't know if it's because I have 3 daughters and, sisters and, athletic mom and a great aunt who was a professional baseball player. But, I like watching the women's game better than the guys' game.
Well, it's nice of you to share, although what I'm trying to encourage everyone out there is to watch the game at the highest level. And to be completely honest, the game at the highest level is still the men's game. And so I encourage all of my kids to become fans of Liverpool and Man City. And we try to take them.
My sister Noelle would want to hear you say Manchester United.
Well, I will throw that in. There's nothing wrong with Manchester United. Obviously, we can all, jump on the bandwagons. And this year, obviously, the bandwagon in the EPO was Liverpool. What an extraordinary season they were having. But I remember the great Man United teams with Ferguson and some of those incredible players that he coached, including Cristiano Ronaldo, who ascended to one of the greatest players of all time. So I have no issue blessing Manchester United as well.
No, that's awesome. On Friday of this week, we actually have Kelly Nascimento De Luca, who is Pele's daughter, coming on the show. And she just came out, her documentary was picked up by Netflix, which is Warriors of a Beautiful Game, about, the struggle that, women's professional soccer players have. It's a great, great piece. And Susie Petroselli, who's one of the producers of it, her daughter plays lacrosse for me and helped me get Kelly onto the show on Friday. So it'll be exciting to have her on and have a chance to talk to her about it.
Well, you're going to love her because we had her at the women's breakfast this past year at the United Soccer Coaches Convention. And she showed clips of her documentary, which is absolutely wonderful. But then she also spoke, and she was absolutely brilliant. All of us loved her. She's incredibly bright. You're going to really enjoy the interview. All of us just fell at her feet. She was magnificent. And so was her, the pieces of her documentary that she showed. And so please give her my best from the women's soccer community, because she was very impressive. And I obviously congratulated her on everything she shared and shook her hand. She won't remember me from Adam, because the room was filled with the VIPs in our game. But she was absolutely extraordinary.
She knows you. She knows you, no doubt about it. Well, listen, Anson, this has been literally, for me, it's been fantastic. Before I got on, I said to my daughters and my wife, because we're all quarantined, I said to them, I can't believe that I have this opportunity to interview Anson Dorrance when I've been talking about him for the last 20 years. So this has been great for me. I'm sure our viewers have loved every second of it. for all of you out there, please go get the book right now that's out there. You can get it on Amazon. It's called The Man Watching by Tim Crothers. And also, Anson, how can they find out, like, if a kid wanted to come, are you running soccer camps and stuff that kids can come to at Carolina?
Yeah, obviously the camps are probably blown up for the summer, but they can certainly jump on our websites to look and see if they're going to be active. And if not this summer, then we'd love for the kids to come down. They'll really love the camp. And I appreciate you shilling the book. I appreciate that as well. And I've thoroughly enjoyed this interview. So thank you for your time. It's been a very rich conversation, and I appreciate every question you've asked.
Anson, listen, this has been great for me. Stay safe with your family. Hope the Brooklyn people come out of quarantine soon. Get on that pickleball. I'm sure you're going to be very competitive in the pickleball games as well. So
thanks again. That.
This has been awesome. Have a great day.
Thank you, Dave.
Talk to you soon.
Much. See you later. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.